Welcome, Gwenters. Now, I know some of you were waiting for me to finish up my faction reviews, but I got tired of waiting for them to update the website. It was having problems. And then it was Gwent Masters, and I knew no one would be watching my stream because I wasn't even watching anyone else's streams other than the Masters, which were superb. If any of you guys watch me, you know I love Saber. He's swung by my stream several times. He's just a good all-around dude. And I was happy to see him get that big win and keep a really tight semifinal match. It was unfortunate to see him lose to Colgrim, but it was an epic finals. If you haven't watched it, I really recommend doing that. At least watch the final matches with Pajabol, and Colgrim. It's very, very good. Anyway, with that aside, let's cover a few things. So, there were a bunch of new cards that were released. Selective Mutation was one of those. Draw a card with Adrenaline of your choice, then shuffle back a card from your hand to your deck. Spawn a Witcher student on each allied row. So you get 4 points of Witcher students here, and you get a specific Adrenaline card. I think this is quite good for consistency and really cheap. It is an Alchemy card, so I think this could play really well with the worst faction, Skellige. Joke. Although there wasn't a Skellige faction played in the finals, so decide what you will about that. Neither player even brought a Skellige deck. Though Skellige did get some awesome wins this tournament. Moxie von Decker, I love in her background. If you look, you can see Idaron, Alzur, and Cosimo in the background as like the 3 bounties she hasn't fulfilled. But she's a child of the Black Sun. Look at the top deck. Look at your deck in order from top to bottom. You may shuffle your deck, then put a card on the bottom of it. I wonder what the shuffle means here. I wonder if that's tied to put a card on the bottom of it. I don't know. But this looks like a Nilfgaard card. A lot of people saying, hey, it's the Nilfgaard card we always wanted that isn't. Yeah, pretty boss. This could be a really, really good idea for you to play early on in a round and then just kind of like leave your deck as is, depending on how this May works. So we'll let you know as soon as this goes live. We'll be testing this tomorrow. Berengar, we've already seen. Leo is awesome. Boost self by 1 for every Witcher you control. I think we're going to see him used in a lot of these, like if you were to play Selective Mutation and then play Leo, that's an 8-point play, and you got the 2 Witcher students out there, so pretty solid, and you get that Adrenaline card in hand, which I think is really, really key, and again, I think this card is going to be dope. It's going to be used in any deck that is going to be non-devotion, I think, for the foreseeable future, just because it's so cheap and it's so easy to use. Ermion is the tutor for that, though. Triangle within Triangle, we've seen Snowdrop, Zeal, Order, draw 2 cards, then shuffle 2 cards back to your deck. Whenever you draw a card, boost self by 2. She's pretty awesome. I think Skellige is going to be an amazing deck with her, right? If you think like Skellige or Dodric with Syndicate or Nilfgaard, you're going to draw a card, put a card back. She boosts herself by 2 every time you do that. You get awesome draw consistency. These aren't discarded, so you're not getting any Coral synergy with her, but you are getting synergy with Hame Scalds and with Burn of Brawn and with Mask of Oribos. She's getting value from each of those cards because you're drawing 2 cards and putting them back. Dandelion Poet also getting boost here. And he also got a buff, dropped his provision, which we'll get to in a minute. Idron of Olivo, Mage, Mutant, Human. The first time you spawn a unit each turn, spawn a 1-power copy of it on this row, then give it Doomed. He created Idar, and if you've seen Idar, which we've talked about before, order Adrenaline 3, consume all tokens on this row and gain immunity. Whenever you consume 1 or more units, spawn a drone in this row. So Idar and Idaron all just spawning massive numbers of drones, and if you can keep consuming those, you're off to the races. Just tons and tons of value. You're just going to have to be a little wary of cluttering your side of the board, I think, is going to be the only problem with those. But pretty freaking awesome. It'll be also interesting to see, note that you're spawning a 1-power copy of it anytime you spawn anything, so you could use him theoretically with like With Karen Thier, spawning monster, 1 power copies of monsters twice, Ruhin being an obvious use for that. But anytime you're spawning these Witcher students, you could be also spawning more Witcher students using Eidolon. So kind of a cool idea. Cosmo we've covered, Gwen we've covered, Alzur we've covered. And then we covered most of these monster cards. Succubus is new. You get a Death Wish at the end of your turn. Summon a different copy of Succubus from your graveyard to a random row and give it Doomed. Notably, it has to be a different copy. So you have to establish one in graveyard through consumption already. I think we're going to see some play with this with Dol du Loc. But anyway, really good solid value you get from her. Adrenaline 3, you don't give it Doom, so you can kind of keep consuming her. She's just a cheap Ruhin, but it does require 2 of them. Just keep that in mind. Then Chimera, we talked about. Were-Rat. They finally made Were-Rat cool. This guy's like so nasty looking. Order, reset this unit's power and spawn a number of rats in this roll equal to the amount of boost it lost. I think this is like a cheap Andrega Queen. The cooldown is 1 though, so you can like keep doing this. They talked about on the developer stream Spontaneous Evolution being the awesome synergy. So it would be boosting it by 4, then you boost it by 8 instead because it's a beast. So instead of the 4, it's boosting it by 8. So you go 13 points, then you spawn all 8 rats in that row. Pretty freaking awesome. Notably, it is an order though, so you can get shut down pretty quickly. He doesn't have Veil or anything, so you're very susceptible to lock. Eater, we've covered. So all of the factions got like special locations. Dol du Loc being very specific here. A monster lair unlike any other. Home to countless horrors and monstrosities. Even a Witcher would think twice about setting foot near this hellhole. All these artifacts are getting resilience. Then they get a deploy. And they also get an order. So here, resilience, deploy, spawn, and play Succubus, Puka, Chimera, or Hybrid. So you're getting any of these 4 starter cards. I don't know why you'd go for Hybrid, but it is an option. I think one clear option for me here is Succubus, just because you're getting that dual card synergy. I mean, it's basically like Bonded, right? You need 2 of them, which is just a little weird and a little clunky, but it does work well with Dol du Loc. And then you get this order, move the highest power unit to the top of your deck and spawn a drone on both sides of this card. So you're getting a drone, you're getting a Succubus, so it counts for 6 points, and it does get that resilience. So you can use that order to spawn those drones in the next round. And playing into like a tight round with Glusty would make a lot of sense with this. Koshé, we've covered. V, we've covered. And then going through Nilfgaard, we haven't covered Nilfgaard. I just want to say we had high hopes, and I think they've been dashed against the rocks of reality. Viper Witcher's Adept, they're going to boost themselves by 1 every turn if you have more than your opponent. Ironically, I actually filmed a video for Nilfgaard, was so depressed about it after filming I never even posted it. So I feel like that pretty much sums up how I feel about Nilfgaard. But Coda Weapons gets you this, damage enemy unit by 5, Death Blow, banish it, and spawn a copy of it on the opponent's deck. Notably, it is a different card, which is a little bit weird instead of just like moving that same card to the top of their deck. I think they do that way statuses don't persist. But anyway, Viper Witcher, you're going to spawn a copy of it on top of the opponent's deck. So you're seeing a lot of stuff here to force your opponent's deck. We kind of got this like reverse mill where you're just cluttering your opponent's deck. Pregnant pause for a reason. I don't have much to say. Like, I could be surprised. Probably won't be. Viper Witcher Alchemist, look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put 1 on the top, then swap top cards of your opponent's deck with yours. Cool, weird. They're like combining the Vicavaro Novus and Courier into 1 card. That's fine. A little weird though. Viper Witcher Mentor. I talked about this in my other video, but this just says set power. I think V is a good contrast here. This increases the base power, so it doesn't increase the base power. Instead, he is going to play like our good friend Rico Meersdorf, so he'll come out boosted. And Nilfgaard is just a giant Yrden target. It just, and notably, we're gonna get to this. The bear version of Yrden, Dire Bear, is just gonna be like an awesome counter to Nilfgaard that Nilfgaard just really has no great answers for. Like Warat the All-Seeing is kind of cool. He's the biggest body that Nilfgaard's getting. If you play him to melee, put the highest card in your opponent's deck on top of it. So it could work well with Cantarella, but you don't really want to do that because Cantarella is going to, mill thin, however you want to call it, your opponent's deck, and you need the card delta to be as large as possible for Colgrim. It might just be that we give up on Colgrim and Viper Witcher Mentor. But I think they're valuable, and I think that this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the range deploy maybe makes more sense here. Put the lowest card in your opponent's deck on top of it. Just kind of ruining their next draw. I don't know. Colgrim, we've all seen. He's been out since the beginning. But at the end of Adrenaline 2, so if he is the third card, the penultimate, or the ultimate card played, at the end of your turn, boost self by the difference between number of cards in player's deck. So you want him to be your third card played. He'll sit out there, and at the end of each of your turns, he's going to boost himself by the delta between decks. So if you're able to successfully hyper-thin your deck down to, let's say, 3 or even 0 cards, and your opponent is still sitting pretty at 8 or 10 cards, you're going to see 7 to 10 points of boost coming there, every turn. And so Colgrim represents tons of value, really, really good, but an amazing Yrden target because his base is 1. Gotorgved has resilience, spawn and play one of the base witchers, and then the order is move a unit from your opponent's graveyard to the top of their deck. This is actually kind of cool with Viper. Viper, at the end of your round, put this card in your opponent's graveyard. At the end of your turn, while in graveyard, banish the lowest card from it. If Viper is the only card in the graveyard, give it doomed, then summon it to your opponent's random row. And I knew I had logic on this when I was discussing this on the forums, on the partner chat, but I had it backwards, and I was just really, really strongly reminded of this as I was watching the tournament. My problem with the language here, so they have explained to us that how this card will work is that it will not target itself or other Vipers. It needs to say that, in my opinion. And the biggest reason for that is because Keltalis provides kind of like the counter example of that, where Keltalis doesn't say that, and Keltalis does kill herself. If she is the lowest unit on the board, she will also kill other copies of herself. If your opponent copies one, or if you're playing in a mirror, she will kill the lower value copy of herself. So Viper presumably would do the same. It doesn't, meaning that it can banish higher cost cards from the graveyard, which makes sense because those are useless 98% of the time, Lippy being the obvious exception there. But now that Renew can only play 9 provision or lower cards, I guess the one other one is Sigurdriff was right. So Skellige being the one exception to this rule, you need this Viper to banish those higher provision cards for it to actually be valuable. Because as you read in the second part of this card, if Viper is the only card in the graveyard after it's banished everything else, give it doomed, then summon it to your opponent's random row. So, and whenever it says your, it's whoever's in possession of the card. So when it says to your opponent's random row, it's to the original player's random row that they can then get value from twice because they played it at first for 7 points, 2 armor, and then it gets out of the graveyard, comes back for another 7 points later on. 14 points of total value over 2 rounds. Kind of cool card. I'm not convinced it's going to work properly. I'm not convinced that it's going to work how they described it to us. I'm not convinced that they're going to change it to work how they described it to us. Because it is a little bit bonkers if that's how it is going to work. Notably, at the end of your turn, while in graveyard, banish the lowest cost card from it. Right? So it's whatever the lowest cost card is, except for this, evidently. I also want to say that there's nothing in here that says that it needs to have gone from the board to the graveyard at the end of the turn in order to end up in the opponent's graveyard. Could be that this just gets killed, goes to the opponent's graveyard. Theoretically, the only way to shut that down would be through a lock. I know for the longest time Ruhin didn't work with locks. They later did a hotfix after several seasons to change that. It will be interesting to see how this will work. I know a lot of people have heard different things, some consistency from CDPR, but I will believe it when I see it. Anyway, this is the coolest card that Nilfgaard has, no question in my mind. This is absolutely the coolest card, which goes to speak to how terrible the other ones are, in my opinion. And I totally get. I want to address one criticism that Salama Barza noted. We don't want Nilfgaard to be the greatest faction. No, what we don't want is for a pure removal, utter garbage deck to play against to be the meta, right? There's nothing that says that the strongest empire in the later part of the books and in the games can't have weaknesses of their own that they're trying to build and develop, right? Yes, it is an empire based off of intrigue and backstabbery and assassinations and poisons, etc., etc., etc. That doesn't mean that the other factions didn't have similar things, so why can't we just give Nilfgaard some of those same engines? It's an empire. Give it some engines. Give it some value. Give it some of its own stuff that people can remove and have like obnoxious moments with, other than Magni Division. Come on. Anyway, I digress. Ivar Evil Eye is pure trash. I hate him. I think this is the stupidest card. 10 provisions for a card that at best is going to get you some massive value in the middle of a round, right? So this is like a good finisher for round 1. Because his Adrenaline 2 is going to change his card to only do 4 damage, which makes him play for 8 points for 10 provisions, which is hot trash garbage, uselessness. Otherwise, his deploy is swap this unit's power with that of an enemy unit. So, like, theoretically, you play this onto a Hamadryad that's boosted up to 12, and then you swap her. The 4 for the 12 ends up being a 16-point play because you're swapping over that 8 points, and then he would be sitting on your side of the board at 12, whereas the Hamadryad would be sitting at 4. So the 16 points of value is obviously really good. Not saying it's bad whatsoever, but once again, it feeds right into a Yrden, since his base value will still be the same. Although they've swapped power value, doesn't mean that he has changed his base value to being that card's boosted value, right? So, or whatever that base card is. I mean, theoretically, you could like swap this for Arnagod or something like that. Anyway, I'm not seeing it. Nilfgaard was a huge miss. There's some patch notes updates that we're going to go over very shortly. Northern Realms, though, was pretty good going into this patch, and boy, have they got some fun toys to play with. I just want to point out Keldar here becoming basically the new Von Hurst for Northern Realms, and Northern Realms just getting a crazy number of these Witcher students, right? So target practice, giving you boost an allied Witcher by allied unit by 4. If there's a Witcher on the boosted unit's row, also spawn a Witcher student on the row, so you're getting one there. Notice that this talks about Griffins, and you do want this Arch Griffin to be that target. At the end of the round, shuffle this back into your deck, keeping its boosts. I do want to point out that has 10 provisions, so your chances of getting this back are quite low. But say you're boosting this up by 4, because it's going to go back into your deck. Then you're going to use Erland, and you're going to use Erland to boost a bunch of stuff from your deck, pull out all those units. Blue Stripes would be my preferred target here. And then you're going to remove boosts from all the other cards in deck, so you have like 6 left, and one of those is Arch Griffin, who has been boosted up by 4 points. Well, Erland's going to take that 4 boost. He's going to strip that off the Arch Griffin, which you no longer need. Doesn't do you much good later on, but it is going to go straight back into Erland, which just gives us this crazy carryover value. Notably, it does have to survive on the board, right? It's not going to go back into your deck from the graveyard. So just keep that in mind. But crazy cool, lots of fun. Oh, Griffin Witcher Rangers kind of have a similar idea here. Boost health by 1 for every unit on the opposite row. So good in like a later round, and then transfer all boosts from self to an allied unit. Again, would look really good on Arch Griffin, later to Erland. Especially if you can get last say with Erland, you win, right? Like, it's just so much value. Yeah, and the ability to get the immunity late. The only way to deal with him is an Igni or a Yrden after. I mean, you could use Curse of Corruption or Scorch. That's true. But those are kind of a gamble, and the opponent can kind of play around those a little bit, and it also makes it so you can't play over that value. And if he is, if the opponent has last say, then you really can't get to him ever, right? Because he's not going to trigger until after Igni or Yrden. So I just think, and I would love to be proven wrong, even though I love Northern Realms, that Erland is the best card in this expansion. Just like incredibly versatile, and the other cards that have been put here are just so helpful for him. Also note Kersen in here, so resilience and spawn one of the Griffin Witchers. The order boosts a unit in your deck. So like all the deck boosting that has really only benefited Scoia'tael is now coming to Northern Realms, and it has fantastic freaking synergy. Imagine if you had Invigorate with Northern Realms, right? I mean, just step back, and we're gonna get to the other cards. Don't worry. Just think about that for a moment, right? Like, let that settle in. Start to think about what that means, right? Formation cards now get boosted an additional point plus the one they're already pre-boosted to. Inspired cards are already good to go. Don't need to use Uprising. Like, the ability to choose whichever leader ability you want. A Shield Wall. Is just so much more readily available to you. You could even use like Stockpile, something that's been trash for so long, but you don't need to use those boosts onto On a Stringer or to on Sace. You just already have them. A Bloody Baron. He's going to come out pre-boosted. You just play him to melee row. He's good to go, pre-boosted. Boom. Zing. You get the bleeds. Go home. I just think about that. Well, I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of thinking about it over the next few days, but like, this is crazy. All right. Moving on to Scoia'tael. We didn't cover them. Look, Scoia'tael, I think, got some cool cards. He got some trash cards. It is building on the movement the movement archetype, and some of these are just trash. Making a bomb is garbage. There's no bomb synergy in this game. Bomb heavers are trash. Move an enemy unit to the other row, give a bleeding 4. If it's the only unit on that row, damage it by 4 instead. So like here you're getting row movement, 4 damage. You might as well just play a Dragoon. You get the movement that way. You don't need to worry about damaging your opponent's unit to get value. You're just good to go, right? This is like a worse Dragoon with no Elven synergy and no factional synergy. Like Scoia'tael, it's like the worst. I mean, nature cards are pretty good, so I don't want to like to say they have like the worst overall, but they have like a few tactic cards with Waylay and Yorvith's Gambit. Just don't make sense. Like, they don't have any factional synergy. And a bomb as a faction card, like, this should have been a neutral. I have a feeling like it was a neutral, and then they're like, what do we give to Scoia'tael? I don't know, just give it the making a bomb. I guess that fits with Witchers and Cat School of the Cat, but like, don't all Witchers make bombs? I don't. Anyway, I digress. Catwitcher Adept. Melee, give an enemy unit bleeding to the number of units on that row. Ranged, give an allied unit vitality to the duration number of units on that row. Could be cool with Hamadryads. The bleeding, I think, is going to be dumb. Bleeding and vitality are kind of trash, except for outside of the Hamadryad archetype. So I don't think he's going to get much play. Did anybody say Yrden for Catwitcher Mentor? I mean, pretty cool. Boost self by the number of cards on this row. Kind of just like a great feed-in for Great Oak. Drillin 4, whenever a card appears on this row, boost self by 1, and note that triggers as soon as you play the 5th card in your hand. So you don't have to this doesn't have to be the 5th card played. You could play it early, and then after those, all those other cards are gonna get boost this by 1. I kind of think of this as like a Great Oak mixed with Isengrim a little bit. Catwitcher Saboteur, move an enemy to the leftmost position on the row. On its row, damage it by 1 for every card it passes. So you're just going like from right to left. As many units as it passes, that's how much damage it's going to take. Catwitcher, at the end of your turn, move self to the other row and damage a random enemy on the opposite row by 1. Adrenaline 4, damage it by 2 instead. This guy's going to be awesome with Doblathana Sentries. Like, if you play Doblathana Sentries to range, you drop down some Dryad Matrons, and then you drop down this guy. You now have 6 cards at 5 provisions that just get incredible value over time. He's going to get boosted by 1 every time he moves for each Doblathana Sentry you have. So if you had 2, he's going to get boosted by 1 twice, which equals 2 times, which equals 2. It is getting late for me, but I can do the math. But he will boost it by 2, and then he is going to damage an enemy unit by at least 1, if not 2, depending on how late it is into the round. So just getting crazy value at some point in the round, getting you up to 4 points without you needing to do anything whatsoever. He's just going to get boosted by those Doblathana Sentries and damage enemy units on opposite rows. Granted, the opponent could play all their units to 1 row, but Catwitchers are just going to take advantage of that with Saboteurs. So I think that he's good for forcing your opponent to play between both rows and taking advantage of that. Gaetan, move the other cards from this row to the other row. Damage a random enemy unit for each card moved by 1. Notably, keep in mind, Doblathana Sentries are going to damage units opponent units by 1 every time they move. So you could set them up onto melee, trick your opponent into thinking you don't have Catwitcher, use Gaetan to switch them back, damage an enemy card by the value of units you have on your melee row by that number, after you've already used Catwitcher Saboteur to damage a specific enemy unit after you force them all onto 1 row. So, cool stuff you can do with that. Brehon, this is the name card they first introduced. I think I'm kind of least excited for him, but destroy the rightmost unit on an enemy row with at least 5 units, Adrenaline 3. Destroy the rightmost unit on an enemy row with at least 3 units instead, so he can destroy big units for pretty cheap, and he puts 4 points on the board. You just have to make sure your opponent has a bunch of units on the same row, which could be a little bit difficult. Just because of how you're forcing things between 2 rows with the other cards. Stiga Castle, Resilience, you spawn one of the Catwitchers, and then Order, move 3 allied units to the other row. Kind of cool. I think I would have rather seen this be opponent units, because as we see here with Brehon, we really need something that can move opponent units back. Aired works. But notably, aired is only from melee to ranged, so just something to keep in mind. Plus, you kind of lose value because you do 2 damage to the card you want to destroy with Bran, unless that card is played to range, which people are probably going to be smart enough to play around once they see your Scoia'tael playing Witchers. Saber-Tooth Tiger Stealth, at the start of your turn, damage all enemy units that are alone on their row by 2. And transform himself into Saber-Tooth Tiger. Saber-Tooth Tiger has Zeal Order transform into Saber-Tooth Tiger Stealth. So you can kind of go back and forth between these two. Notably, it is a transform, so if this gets damaged, you're just going to go wonk, wonk, and come back at 7 points. If he gets boosted, you're going to go wonk, wonk, come back at 7 points. So don't boost this. Pretty cool, though. I mean, you can get some good value turn over turn and force people to play to the same row and take advantage of them with Catwitcher, Saboteur, and Brehon. Catwitcher liking them to be on different rows. So just kind of things to think about. They are a little bit wonky in that they can't really decide what they want to do, right? Gezrus of Leda is pretty awesome, though. This is the second best card of this expansion, I think. Melee, at the end of your turn, move self to the ranged row and boost a random allied unit on this row by 1. Ranged, at the end of your turn, move self to the melee row and damage random enemy unit on the opposite row by 1. Okay, so melee is going to go to ranged boost. Ranged can go to melee damage. Kind of like Treant Boar with its own heal, but he's always doing damage or boosting, just depending on where he's moving to. Adrenaline 3, instead of a random unit, affect all other units in a row. Pretty boss. Notably, I would assume when you move back to ranged, that is going to include himself. So if you're playing him as the 4th card, even if he's the only card you're playing, you have no other cards on the board, this guy is going to get 4 points, right? 2 from boost, 2 from attack, depending on which row you play him to. Hey, Silver Palm, welcome for joining, or thank you for joining. I'm going into a very lengthy description about all the new cards that are coming out tomorrow. Anyway, pretty freaking awesome. Now, if you have a bunch of cards on your row, that's going to be great. I think Gezrus is like the rat killer, right? And granted, the one downside about him is it's random. So there's no guarantee that it's going to hit the row that you want. But you're probably going to get value out of him in the long round. So he's cool. I think he's going to be really fun to play. And again, if you're playing him with double Bothana Sentries, he's moving automatically. He's getting 2 points if you have 2 Bothana Sentries on the board. I think it would be cool to see Scoia'tael have some way to create more of those Bothana Sentries, because I think that's going to be super dope. Notably, he'd rather take a contract from Enshade than a Dwan any day. Less likely to receive a knife between the ribs. Makes sense, I agree. We've covered Skellige. You guys have seen that video. The only thing I mentioned here, somebody pointed this out today. Did you notice this guy only has 1 arm? But he really does only have 1 arm. He's kind of cool, though. He's going to get you 2 Witcher students. 2 charges, notably, is an order, so you do have to wait for him to tick. But once he kicks that off, it's going to be pretty great. Lots of self-damage stuff. Only things I want to point out here. Herrn Kaluk. Resilience. Deploy, spawn and play Bear Witcher Adept, Bear Witcher Mentor, or Bear Witcher Quartermaster. Order, heal adjacent units by 3. So kind of like the reverse of Totem. But heal adjacent units by 3 is the best of all of these, right? That plays for 6 points of value. And you get that automatically with like Bear Witcher, I think like a Torsic Champion or whatever he is. That 8 power unit that damages himself by 4, and then once he has that Berserk, so you could just heal him back up. Since it has resilience, you can just dump him down and then heal him. Anyway, cool stuff you can do. Dire Bear, though, is probably one of the best, if not the best, whatever you want to call these, like mascots. But units in this and opposite row can't be boosted. Remember, heals are different than boosts, so you can still heal your own units, which plays really well with this whole self-damage and punish archetype. But you are just wrecking nerds. Getting the Forced Gurden here basically is just going to destroy all of Nilfgaard's hopes and dreams. He does play for 8, so he's a huge, thick boy to remove. Tons of fun. And then Arnagod we've covered. Last but not least, we have Salamandra. Super creeps. So we get stolen mutagens. Pick a mutagen. Red, damage an enemy unit by 4. Blue, poison an allied unit and gain 5 coins. Green, boost an allied unit by 4 and give it Veil. If you control at least 3 Salamandra units, profit 3. So you're going to want to be playing all Salamandra. It's good to see Salamandra getting some love here outside of Assault. So I think pretty solid that way. Salamandra Lackey, at the end of your turn, if you gained at least 1 coin this turn, boost self by 1. You don't have to worry about placement here, as you typically have with other cards. And you can go in a certain sequence to get the value from the boosted coin, or the horde. Instead, Salamandra Lackey is just saying if you gained a coin this turn, you boost self by 1, which from all these cards is pretty easy to do. Abomination. Tribute 1, poison self. Whenever this unit is poisoned, boost self by 2. Adrenaline 4. At the end of your turn, purify self. So the adrenaline looking very nice here. This is like the creepiest card ever created in Gwent. I mean, just totally disturbing. We're so preoccupied with whether they could, never once considered if they should, which is a fantastic reference to Jurassic Park, which I do love dearly. But anyway, crazy value getting out of your poisons there. Yeah, not much else to say about that. Just be aware here, there's a lot of self-poison stuff that's going on, so this could also be useful when you want to poison a whole bunch of stuff to just not have to worry about it. Salamander being the good example of that. Salamandra Mage, tribute 4, damage 3 adjacent units, enemy units by 2, so you gotta pay for that up front. Then Adrenaline 5, whenever you pay a tribute ability, gain 1 coin. So these are nice to play out at like your 6th card, and then you're automatically getting adrenaline. You can play it even before that, just let it sit on the board, and once that adrenaline kicks in, then you're going to start getting that coin anyway. Notably, all these guys are with tributes, Abomination, Gellert Blenheim is Fee, Roland Blenheim is not, but then you get this tribute from Salamander and Black Rayla. So some good tribute synergy there. Failed Experiment. At the end of your turn, lose 1 coin. If you have no coins, damage yourself by 1 instead. While poisoned, disable this ability. So, Failed Experiment wants to be poisoned. It thirsts for the poisoning. That way it will not drain your coins or damage itself. But 9 for 5 is probably one of the best value propositions you can get in game. 7 for 4 has been typically one of the best ROIs available to bronze cards. Anyway, the Blenheim brothers here. So Gellert Blenheim, profit 2, fee 1, poison allied unit boosted by 2, cooldown of 1. It's able to do that only once per turn, but really good value there if you don't mind poisoning your own stuff. And again, Salamander Abomination working really well with that. Notably, this is also kind of the Yrden target here. I just think like if you can carry Yrden with Bear Witchers, you're gonna wreck nerds. That's what I'm thinking so far. Roland Blenheim. Whenever a unit is poisoned, gain 2 coins. Adrenaline 5. Whenever an allied unit is poisoned, gain 2 coins instead. So you only get the maximum value out of the coins early in a round. He is 7 for 7, so he is good just like points out here. But just something to keep in mind. They are thinking about each other in the woods and in the sewer. Salamander Hideout. Resilience. Deploy, spawn and play Failed Experiment, Salamander Abomination, Salamander Mage, or Salamander Alaki. Order, move a poison from an ally to another unit. Could be to a different allied unit, could be to an enemy unit. That order could be pretty awesome with Salamander. So, despite their cute little faces, it's best to avoid petting them, as the salamander, when threatened, secretes a deadly toxin that boils the very skin it comes into contact with. Yeah, pretty nasty little beasts. Profit of 1, deploy poison unit, tribute 9, poison all units on the battlefield instead, increase the profit by 1 for every allied salamander unit. So the more Salamandra units you have, the more value he's going to get from the profitability, but the more units he's going to end up poisoning. So you do really need to think about what you want to do there. I think you could do some crazy stuff with like Igor and Salamander Abomination. Just thinking of that. Fallen Rayla. Profit 3, Tribute 3, Gain Veil, Adrenaline 3. Whenever you pay a tribute ability, boost self by that tribute's cost. Obviously, Salamander here is going to work really well. I also think Savola being really great there too, with a 9 cost tribute, where Fallen Rayla is going to get just a ton of value from that. Here though, outside of Salamander Mage, you're just seeing a lot of boost. Yrden! I mean, there's going to be some Yrden incoming. Yeah, I am filming. Sorry, Silver Palm. I've been filming and reading through cards. Okay, I'm almost done. We got to go to Patchnotes. We got to cover Patchnotes. I do want to say, and I know some people might be deeply hurt by this choice. Now I got to remember it. Control-Shift-T. Wrong thing. Hang in there, folks. I clicked on the wrong one. I went like all the way back to the end. Ignore my mini tabs. Alright. Now, there is a draft patch notes 8.0. I'm not going to cover that. Like, if you want to read all the stuff that's changed, you go for it. Personally, I like the thrill of just jumping in there and getting what I get and doing it over and over again until I get something really awesome. I don't know. But if you really want to see the deep thought that they've put into it, there it is. I think this would be really cool to see some competitive gameplay off of, because people can't just like bring decks that they've played with and practiced with ad nauseum. They have to know the Witcher, the Gwent game, and know all of the cards and be able to interact with all of them. That would be fun. But it is really too RNG varied right now for me to trust it. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. But these patch notes, however, this is the juicy deets we all want to get into. I hope packages can get respelled here, but that's my only criticism. Lots of changes. Tons of Witchers. Yeah, this is an Eridan change here. Fix and some quality of life changes. So let's get into it. First off, neutrals. Eskel, Vesemir, Lambert changed from 2 to 3. This is the change everyone has been begging for forever. So they now drop down for 9 points of value. Provision changed from 8 to 7. Ability changed to Adrenaline 4. Summon Eskel, Vesemir, Lambert from your deck to this row. Notably, you just have to protect them, and this will kick in automatically. So you can keep that in mind. I will also say the Adrenaline does make for a nice combo here, but imagine using a deck that we created this season, get good Witchers, where you're able to use a Seer to replay Vesemir Mentor. Crazy value onto these guys, right? I mean, Vesemir Mentor onto these guys right now is going to play for 12 points of value. Amazing thinning play, crazy tempo. Only makes sense that these guys are nearly as good as Mahakam Volunteers, right? That's what I think. Vesemir Mentor has changed, though, to play boost all Witcher units on the battlefield by 1. Adrenaline 5 also boost Witcher units in hand and deck, so this is connected to the deployability. Will not kick in automatically, so you do need to play him as the 6th or later card in a round. Just good to keep in mind. I think this makes sense with all the new Witcher targets. Roach Provision changed from 10 to 9. Knickers changed from 9 to 8. Dandelion Poet changed from 12 to 11. All of those are great. Portal has changed from 13 to 12. I wish this would have gone down to 10 with this change, but they did make a lot of cards better, which we'll get to in a minute. Deploy, summon a random 4 provision unit from your deck to the left side of this card. After 3 turns, summon a random 4 provision unit from your deck to the right of this card. Yeah, strategy in nerfing Portal was to nerf its targets, but they have changed that, which I think makes great sense since they made a whole bunch of 7 for 4s. Bring back the good old 4s. Makes great sense to me. Anyway, Portal is now much more accessible too. Wagberg is finally a siege engine. That took him long enough. Monsters Haunt was changed from 13 to 14. I think that makes great sense. Overwhelming Hunger is oppressive on ladder right now, and this is one way of getting to that. I do think some other cards need to be changed as well, Striga being a potential example for that. Vran Warrior now has 1 armor. Old Spirit Tip Provision changed from 13 to 12. That's fine. This is fine. Imlerith now can discard a unit boost up by its power. It doesn't have to be monster. To have better synergy with Way of the Witcher cards such as Dol Dulak. Just fine but weird since Dol Dulak synergizes well with monster cards anyway, but hey, who am I? Skelga, Brookfar Hunter provision changed from 5 to 4. Encrave Blacksmith now has 1 armor. Northern Realms Vernon Roach has changed from 12 to 11. On the stream, they made it sound like this was Merciless. It's not. It's the Spying Vernon, which makes sense. I think since he plays for 3 points, he's a bigger body, and that synergizes well with the deck still. Hopefully see him included a bit more. Lyrian Cavalry provision changed from 5 to 4. Cool. Although I think the obvious target for the Portal here is Kedweni Cavalry, since they get boosted by 3 whenever they're summoned from the deck anyway. Scoia'tael Elven Swordmaster changed from 5 to 4. This one's actually awesome. Chariot now has Siege Engine category, also cool, instead of just machine. Unfortunately, I don't think there really are other machines. I'd have to go back and double check. So you don't really get the Harmony proc elsewhere, which would be super awesome. Coup de Grace. So I do want to say Nilfgaard got no great cards, really, honestly. Like Viper is cool, but I think we're gonna see people figure out a way to play around it really quickly. Coup de Grace was the change that happened that could see some amazing play. So buffed, going from 10 to 9 provisions, then damage is increased from 2 to 3, making the death blow that much easier to access, and just dealing more value against Joachim as a good example. Often Hildegrand provision changed from 9 to 8. So he's super easy to include into a tactical provision deck. Brothan's changed from 3 to 4. Provision changed from 11 to 10. But he's only creating something from your starting deck. I think this makes sense. He is oppressive as a tech tool against so many decks. Being able to like steal drummers with Duchess Informant, but murder Andrega Larvas with Mage Infiltrators. You now have to include those in your deck, and those cards are mediocre at best, except for Duchess Informant, which gets a lot of play in an Assimilate deck. And he does have that Assimilate proc, so I think that makes a lot more sense now. Infiltrator just getting you a Spying Tag unit. Then Emissary. Boosted unit increased from 6 to 7, which is fine. A Seer provision changed from 8 to 7. I think this was an unnecessary buff to her, but hey, I'm happy to see it. Nazca Sergeant is going to be one of the targets here, but I think Master of Disguise is super awesome with the factional stratagem being that damage and lock. Viper Witcher name changed to Kingslayer. That's just because they have other Viper Witchers available now. And then Fire Scorpion now has 1 armor. Plus the 4 points, so I got the boost and the armor. I think we're going to see it played more, as we saw Payable use it really well on ladder. You guys know I love Fire Scorpion. I think it's an awesome card. Then Alba Armory Cavalry changed from 4 to 5. Armor changed from 0 to 1. Then Imperial Enforcers now have Zeal, which is fine, but a little weird. New features. You can now gift people stuff. Available only for meteorite power and real money purchases, so you can't use it for ore or keys, but you can give real money purchase gifts to anyone you want. So that's kind of fun. I wish meteorite powder was actually in good supply, but is in very short supply, so I doubt we'll see much of that happening, but it is something you can do, and some of those massive streamers who have been around since day one will probably be giving it away as prizes on stream. I probably won't be one of those people because I like to show you guys the fancy way cards look, and I can only make a few of them a month. So, you know, we are where we are. Finally, game fixes. A Seer now reveals the pick card before putting it into the deck. Developer comment, quality of life changes, removes the need to check the graveyard. I agree with this. There's some other ones that do need to have the same action added to. I was just playing with one earlier today, notably that would be Combi. So I have to go and check the opponent's deck. Don't ask why I was playing with Combi. I was trying to get the beast thing, okay? Also, Combi's so much fun. Oh, I discarded a whatever the big dude who spawns a slicey Duchess, whatever his name is. Exploitation. No, ask the alchemist. He's clearly a pimp and a real douche. But anyway, Adriana the Mink. Runa's tooltip now correctly mentions that the target is picked randomly. Amphibious Assault, Blood Eagle, Avalok, Sage, and Overguiding Justice will now properly show a shuffled version of the deck instead of listing the cards in order. Cool. It's good. I guess some people had figured that out. I had not personally, but that's awesome. Officer tooltip was harmonized similar to other tooltips. Erdenbrag Glass will now correctly increase the damage by frost. Some people are having some problems with that. And Defender is now correctly referred to in the tooltips as status. Units with bounty status will now grant coins correctly only when destroyed. I want to know how people were taking advantage of that, but that's kind of cool. And then Master Mirror, Cantarella, and Icons and Reward Book all fixed as well. Anyway, tons of stuff that's happening. I'm going to post this up so you guys can review it while you're jumping into the game and testing out these new cards, downloading stuff. Let me know what you think. If you've come up with some magic ideas, post those up in the comments. Until next time, good luck on the path. Get out there. Keep on gwenting.